Welcome back to Fusty Stories. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and get ready for another story you won't forget. Let's dive back to the story. Emily Clarke had always believed that love could conquer everything, but her marriage to Richard Clarke quickly shattered that illusion. From the very beginning, Richard had treated her coldly, never valuing her because she came from a poor background, while he basked in wealth and entitlement. Richard's heart belonged entirely to his mistress, Vanessa Hayes, a woman who delighted in flaunting her beauty and mocking Emily at every opportunity. In their own home, Emily was reduced to a servant, cleaning, cooking, and obeying orders while Richard and Vanessa sat in luxury, sipping wine and laughing at her misfortune. No matter how hard she tried to please Richard, her efforts were dismissed as pathetic, reinforcing her sense of worthlessness. The worst part was that Emily still loved him, clinging to the hope that one day he would see her value. Yet each insult, each cruel word, eroded her spirit further. The household that should have been her sanctuary became a prison, every corner echoing with humiliation and rejection. Despite the constant abuse, Emily carried herself with quiet dignity, knowing that succumbing entirely to despair would mean losing herself completely. She had no friends to confide in, no family to lean on, and the world outside her gilded cage seemed just as merciless. Vanessa, sensing her dominance in Richard's heart, constantly sought to assert power over Emily, taking pleasure in orchestrating public humiliations and private torments alike. Each day felt like a battle she could not win, a relentless storm of scorn and derision. Emily's existence became defined by obedience, her identity slowly stripped away by two people who thrived on her suffering. Yet, somewhere deep within her, a small spark refused to die, a spark that would one day ignite and change the lives of everyone who had ever underestimated her. She could not see it yet, but the tides were about to turn in a way Richard and Vanessa would never imagine. Vanessa Hayes had a meticulous plan, and it revolved entirely around one goal: becoming Richard Clarke's lawful wife. She had long grown tired of sharing his attention with Emily and understood that the only way to secure her place was to convince Richard to end his marriage. Vanessa's manipulations were subtle, planting seeds of doubt in Richard's mind about Emily's worth, exploiting his arrogance and prejudice against her humble background. Emily's pleas and quiet suffering became tools for Vanessa's narrative, painting her as unworthy, needy, and undeserving. Richard, intoxicated by his obsession with Vanessa, swallowed every word, blinded by desire and oblivious to the cruelty of his actions. Emily's reality, a life of endless subservience and scorn, was dismissed as trivial, her heartbreak ignored. Vanessa, skilled in the art of provocation, stoked Richard's pride and ego, reminding him that a woman of Emily's status could never meet the expectations of a man of his wealth. Slowly, she whispered poison into his ear, ensuring that when the time came, Richard would see divorce as not only justified but desirable. Emily remained oblivious to the extent of their plotting, believing that her enduring love might eventually soften Richard's heart. Each day, she continued to perform her duties, pretending to accept her role while secretly hoping for reconciliation. Her heart ached not only because of Richard's indifference, but because she had lost the home she had once dreamed of sharing with him. Vanessa, on the other hand, moved with calculated precision, carefully timing confrontations and emotional manipulation to isolate Emily completely. The house, once Emily's place of hope, had become a battlefield where every interaction was a strategic move in Vanessa's relentless game. Little did Emily know, her life was about to shatter completely, thrusting her into a world of suffering that would eventually lead her to an encounter that would change her destiny forever. The day Richard signed the divorce papers was the day Emily's world crumbled entirely. She begged, pleaded, and tried to reason with him, but Richard, intoxicated by his infatuation with Vanessa, laughed at her desperation. "You're nothing, Emily," he sneered, "a maid in your own home, unworthy of my time or love." Vanessa, standing beside him, smiled cruelly, savoring every ounce of Emily's pain. They pushed her out of the house, calling her worthless, reminding her that she had no claim to the life she once imagined. Emily's heart shattered, not only from the divorce, but from the realization that the man she loved never truly cared for her. Her tears fell like rain as she walked away, the world suddenly cold, merciless, and unforgiving. Homeless and alone, she wandered the streets, the weight of betrayal pressing down on her chest like a stone. The rain drenched her, the sun scorched her, and hunger gnawed at her stomach. Yet there was nowhere to turn, nowhere to hide. Emily's mind replayed every humiliation, every cruel remark, Every moment Richard and Vanessa had treated her as less than human. She felt discarded, invisible, and powerless. Each step she took through the city streets seemed heavier than the last, the pavement beneath her echoing the emptiness in her soul. Friends she had once imagined she could call upon were non-existent, and her modest savings had long been depleted. She had no family to comfort her, no shelter to protect her, only the bitter reality of abandonment and despair. Yet amidst this suffering, Emily's heart carried a quiet resilience, a fragile spark of hope that refused to extinguish. She didn't know it yet, but fate was about to intervene in the most unexpected way, offering her a lifeline that would rewrite her story forever. Emily wandered aimlessly, consumed by thoughts of Richard and Vanessa's cruelty, when tragedy struck. Distracted and trembling, she stumbled into the path of an oncoming car. Time slowed as the vehicle approached, and she closed her eyes, expecting the worst. The impact knocked her to the ground, pain shooting through her body, and everything went black. But her fate was about to shift. The driver, a tall, distinguished man with an aura of authority, immediately rushed out. It was President William Harrington, who had never hurt anyone in his life, and was unprepared for such a sudden catastrophe. Panic surged through him as he realized what happened, and despite his wealth and power, he felt helpless. He carefully lifted Emily, cradling her as he drove to the hospital, his mind racing with concern, questions, and the pressure of his public duties weighing heavily on him. At the hospital, William stayed by her side, his hands trembling as he watched her suffer. The doctor explained that her injuries would prevent her from working for a while, but fortunately, they were temporary. Emily, waking slowly to consciousness, was startled to see a man of such stature showing genuine concern. William asked gently, "Why were you out on the road like this? You could have died." Emily, exhausted and heartbroken, poured out her story, the abuse, the divorce, the homelessness, the hunger, the pain inflicted by Richard and Vanessa. William listened silently, a mixture of empathy and disbelief crossing his face. Her words pierced him, stirring emotions he had never allowed himself to feel, and in that moment a bond formed, one that would forever change both their lives. William refused to leave Emily to the cold streets again. He brought her to his villa, a place of safety and comfort that sharply contrasted with the misery she had endured. Emily was awestruck, not only by the opulence, but by the kindness and respect William showed her, things she had never experienced from Richard or Vanessa. Confined to a wheelchair for the time being, Emily could do nothing but marvel at the care provided, yet a lingering feeling of disbelief haunted her. Could someone like the president truly care for her? Every gesture of tenderness, every warm smile from William, began to chip away at the pain she carried, replacing it with fragile hope she thought she had lost forever. The days turned into weeks as William's presence became her anchor. He attended to her injuries, ensuring she was comfortable, safe, and slowly regaining strength. Emily began to understand that he, too, carried burdens, the relentless pressure of leading a nation, constant scrutiny from the public, and the expectations of his mother, Margaret Harrington, who insisted he marry a suitable woman. Yet amidst these pressures, William treated Emily with sincerity and compassion, listening to her, comforting her, and slowly falling in love with a woman who had endured so much. Emily, despite the pain in her past, began to feel a warmth in her heart, a sense of belonging she had never known before. As Emily regained her strength, a quiet love blossomed between her and William. Though they kept their relationship secret from the public, the bond between them deepened every day. Emily, who had once felt invisible and discarded, now experienced a sense of value, respect, and intimacy she had never known. William, too, found solace in her resilience, her intelligence, and the way she viewed the world with courage despite all she had endured. Together, they shared moments of laughter, reflection, and hope, forming a private sanctuary that shielded them from the scrutiny and demands of the outside world. Eventually, their love led to a private marriage, a ceremony of deep meaning rather than grandeur, where only a few trusted aides witnessed their union. Emily, still recovering and careful to regain her strength fully, embraced her new life with determination. She was no longer the discarded woman Richard and Vanessa had tormented. She had a protector, a partner, and a life of dignity. Their love, born out of compassion and shared humanity, marked the beginning of a new chapter, one where Emily could reclaim her strength, her identity, and her sense of self-worth. Yet, even as happiness began to bloom, fate had a reminder that past injustices rarely fade quietly. Months passed, and Emily recovered completely, regaining her mobility and independence. Soon, she discovered she was pregnant, a development that brought immense joy to both her and William. The villa, once a place of safety and healing, now became a home filled with anticipation, preparation, and quiet celebration. William, careful to maintain secrecy due to his position, respected Emily's wishes to avoid public scrutiny, waiting outside the mall while Emily shopped for baby clothes and necessities. The ordinary act of preparing for their child brought an unusual normalcy to her life, a sense of control and hope that she had long been denied. Emily's excitement, however, was tempered by memories of Richard and Vanessa. She knew their cruelty had left scars, emotional and physical, and feared encountering them once again. Despite these fears, she refused to let her past dictate her present. Each choice, each moment of preparation for her child, became a small act of reclaiming agency over her life. Emily was no longer the woman who had begged, suffered, or been discarded. She was resilient, cherished, and loved by a man who valued her above all else. Her confidence, once fragile, now radiated quietly, a testament to her enduring strength and the transformative power of compassion and genuine love. The mall was bustling, shoppers moving through aisles with casual energy that contrasted sharply with Emily's tense awareness. As she selected baby clothes, her mind focused on the joy of a new life growing inside her. That focus shattered when she spotted Vanessa haze across the corridor, loudly berating a shop assistant while casting venomous glances in her direction. Vanessa's eyes locked on Emily, and without knowing the full story, she began spewing insults, mocking her supposed poverty and insignificance. Emily's heart raced, not with fear, but with determination. She would not respond directly. Instead, she devised a plan to turn the situation on its head. With calculated precision, Emily staged a fall, making it appear that Vanessa had pushed her. The commotion drew attention, including that of security and bystanders, and set the stage for a dramatic revelation. Vanessa's fury intensified, unaware that Emily now had the upper hand, and her schemes to demean Emily were about to backfire spectacularly. Emily's mind, once filled with fear and helplessness, now focused on justice and reclaiming dignity. In that instant, the woman who had once been powerless became an instrument of fate, ready to expose the cruelty of those who had underestimated her for far too long. Before Emily could fully execute her plan, Richard Clarke appeared, summoned by Vanessa's frantic cries. His face twisted with anger as he saw Emily on the floor, interpreting her staged fall as an attack. Without hesitation, he shoved her roughly, causing her to scream in pain as blood began to trickle from her mouth. In the chaos, Emily's body convulsed with shock, not from the fall alone, but from the realization that Richard's cruelty knew no bounds. The crowd gasped, but no one dared intervene as Richard, blinded by fury and pride, continued to berate the woman he had once called his wife. Unknown to Richard, this scene was being witnessed by someone with far more power than he had ever imagined, President William Harrington. From his car, he had seen an entire altercation unfold, including Richard's brutal shove. The camera on William's security team captured every moment, freezing Richard and Vanessa's cruelty in irrefutable evidence. William's heart surged with rage and protective instinct as he stepped forward, prepared to confront the pair and ensure justice. Emily, despite the physical pain and emotional shock, felt a wave of relief, knowing that the tormentors who had once dominated her life were now about to face consequences they could not escape. William emerged from the car, authoritative and unyielding, declaring to Richard and Vanessa, "The woman you pushed down is my wife, Emily Clarke. As far as I'm concerned, you will face the full weight of the law." Shock rippled through the crowd as cameras caught William's every word and movement, cementing the moment in public record. Richard's jaw dropped, disbelief mixing with fear, while Vanessa's confident demeanor crumbled instantly. Neither had anticipated that their cruelty would be witnessed by the highest authority in the country, nor that their actions would lead to a lifetime of punishment. Emily was immediately taken to hospital, where doctors delivered the devastating news. She had lost a child due to the trauma inflicted. William stayed by her side, holding her hand, offering comfort and promising justice. Richard and Vanessa were swiftly arrested, their crimes fully documented and broadcasted by security footage. The humiliation and torment they had inflicted on Emily now became the evidence that condemned them to life imprisonment. Emily, though heartbroken over the loss of her child, finally felt a sense of vindication and relief. She had survived, endured, and reclaimed her life, standing stronger than ever beside a man who truly loved her. The nightmare of her past had ended, replaced by hope, protection, and a future built on justice and genuine love. After the harrowing events at the mall, Emily Clarke focused on healing, not only physically but emotionally. The loss of her child had left a deep scar, and yet William Harrington's unwavering support reminded her that she was no longer alone. In the privacy of the villa, she allowed herself to grieve, shedding the tears she had long suppressed. William, ever patient, offered gentle words and comfort, reinforcing her sense of worth and safety. Every day, Emily regained strength, walking further, regaining independence, and reclaiming the life that Richard and Vanessa had tried so violently to strip from her. Slowly, the villa transformed from a hospital of healing into a sanctuary of love, filled with laughter, hope, and future plans that once seemed impossible. The emotional support from William also allowed Emily to reflect on her past and recognize her resilience. She realized that she was no longer the powerless woman who had begged, been mocked, and discarded. Every insult, every cruel act of humiliation from Richard and Vanessa now served as fuel for her determination to live fully, without fear or regret. William, seeing Emily's growing confidence and strength, fell even more deeply in love with her, admiring her courage and tenacity. Their bond, forged in circumstances most could never imagine, became unshakable. Emily's heart, once fragile, began to open fully to love and trust, proving that even after betrayal and suffering, life could still offer unexpected joy and security. Though the public remained unaware of their marriage, Emily and William decided to host a small, private celebration to honor their union. Only trusted aides and close friends attended, witnessing the quiet ceremony that held far more meaning than the grandest of events. Emily, radiant in a simple white dress, felt a sense of peace she had never known. William looked at her with admiration and devotion, his eyes reflecting the gravity of the love they shared. In those intimate moments, Emily's past humiliations faded further into memory, replaced with joy, dignity, and belonging. The villa, adorned modestly with flowers and candles, felt like a haven carved out of destiny, a place where her soul could finally breathe freely. Despite the happiness of the moment, Emily could not entirely dismiss the thought of Richard and Vanessa. Their cruelty, although curtailed by justice, had left a lingering sting in her mind. Yet, standing beside William, she realized that fear and anger no longer had power over her. She was a survivor, a woman who had endured betrayal, poverty, and abuse, and now stood in a position of security and love. The celebration was not just a marking of marriage, but a symbolic reclaiming of agency and identity. Emily's life, once dictated by others' whims, was finally her own. Every step she took forward, every moment of joy, was a testament to her resilience, courage, and the justice that had restored balance to her world. As weeks passed, Emily embraced her new life with William fully. Her strength returned, and she no longer needed a wheelchair, walking confidently through the villa's halls and gardens. The physical recovery paralleled her emotional healing. Each day spent in William's care solidified her sense of worth and security. She began to engage in philanthropic work quietly, helping women who had experienced similar abuse, channeling her pain into acts of empowerment. Emily's life was now driven by purpose, love, and determination, a stark contrast of misery she had endured under Richard and Vanessa. William watched with pride as Emily flourished. He admired her intelligence, her compassion, and her resilience. The villa was now a home in the truest sense, filled with laughter, warmth, and mutual respect. Though Emily's past continued to haunt her in fleeting memories, she faced them with courage and the knowledge that she was protected, cherished, and loved beyond measure. William, once burdened by political pressures and expectations, found solace and clarity in Emily's presence. Their bond deepened daily, and together, they envisioned a future filled with stability, love, and happiness, something Emily had once thought impossible. Emily's pregnancy, though tragically lost at the mall incident, taught her the value of patience, hope, and healing. With William's support, she began planning for the future, determined to focus on family, security, and creating a life filled with joy. Though the trauma of losing her child lingered, Emily refused to let it define her. She began engaging in small projects within the community, advocating for women, and ensuring that her voice was heard. Every action reinforced her independence and strength, proving that she was more than the victim Richard and Vanessa had labeled her. William continued to provide unwavering support, blending his roles as a husband, protector, and confidant. His love for Emily was no longer secret, but rather a private truth that enriched their lives every day. The villa became a hub of hope and healing, filled with laughter, learning, and shared dreams. Emily's resilience inspired those around her, and even the smallest gestures, like a stroll through the gardens or quiet moments together, represented a victory over the suffering and humiliation she had endured. Each day became an affirmation that her life had transformed, that she was finally free from the shadows of her past. One quiet afternoon, Emily returned to the city for personal errands, unaware that fate would challenge her once more. In the same bustling streets where she had once suffered humiliation, she spotted Vanessa Hayes, confidently walking with a group of acquaintances. Vanessa, unaware of Emily's new status and strength, immediately began her usual verbal abuse, mocking Emily's supposed weakness and failure. But Emily had changed. She no longer trembled or responded with fear. Instead, she stood tall, letting Vanessa's words hang in the air while planning a subtle but powerful way to turn the situation in her favor. As Vanessa approached, Emily feigned vulnerability, pretending to stumble in the aisle of a store. Vanessa's arrogance led her to believe she had successfully intimidated Emily once again. In truth, Emily's feigned fall was a carefully calculated move, designed to expose Vanessa's cruelty in front of witnesses. Little did Vanessa know that this act would unravel all her assumptions and ultimately lead to the justice she had long evaded. Emily's mind, once clouded with despair, now operated with clarity, determination, and the quiet confidence of someone who had survived the worst and emerged stronger than ever. Vanessa, seeing Emily on the floor, rushed forward with a triumphant glare, unaware that her actions were being watched. Emily, however, executed her plan flawlessly, making it appear as though Vanessa had pushed her violently. The scene drew attention from bystanders and store security, creating an immediate sense of chaos. Vanessa's smug confidence began to crumble as whispers spread, and people recorded the confrontation on their phones. Emily's heart pounded, not from fear, but from a knowledge that the tables had finally turned, that the cruelty of the past would no longer dominate her life. Richard Clarke arrived at the scene, furious at what he perceived as Emily's audacity. Blinded by rage and pride, he shoved Emily roughly, causing her to scream in pain. The sudden act of violence shocked bystanders, but also drew the attention of someone far more powerful. From his car, President William Harrington had observed the entire altercation unfold. Cameras on a security team captured the incident in detail, providing undeniable evidence of Richard and Vanessa's malicious intent. The chaos of the moment set the stage for the ultimate reckoning, one that would ensure Emily's tormentors faced consequences they could not escape. William Harrington stepped from his car, exuding authority and calm, declaring, "The woman you assaulted is my wife, Emily Clarke. You will face the consequences of your actions." Shock and terror overtook Richard and Vanessa. They had never imagined that their cruelty would be witnessed and documented by someone with the highest authority in the nation. Security personnel quickly moved in, ensuring that Richard and Vanessa could not flee, while cameras recorded every reaction. Emily, though injured and shaken, felt a wave of relief wash over her. Justice, long delayed, was finally at hand. The presence of William transformed the scene instantly. Bystanders watched in awe as he commanded respect and ensured Emily's safety. His calm yet powerful demeanor left Richard and Vanessa trembling. Emily's stage fall had worked perfectly, exposing their cruelty publicly and leaving them utterly powerless. William's intervention was not merely about authority. It was a declaration of protection, love, and justice. Emily, for the first time in years, felt completely safe and vindicated. The nightmare imposed by Richard and Vanessa had ended, and a new chapter of empowerment and dignity was beginning. Emily was immediately taken to the hospital for treatment. While William stayed by her side, doctors delivered devastating news. The trauma had caused her to lose the child she had so longed for. Emily's heart ached and tears streamed down her face, but William held her gently, offering comfort, love, and unwavering support. In that hospital room, she realized that while she had suffered a tragic loss, she had also gained something far more powerful: freedom from the cruelty and oppression that had defined her previous life. William's presence reinforced that she was no longer alone, and that she would never again endure the humiliation inflicted by Richard and Vanessa. As she rested, Emily reflected on the dramatic turn of events. Richard and Vanessa's actions had led to their own undoing, providing irrefutable evidence of their cruelty. The cameras and witnesses had captured everything, ensuring that justice would be served. William's love, protection, and guidance became the anchor Emily needed to face both grief and triumph simultaneously. Though the loss of her child weighed heavily, she knew her future was secure. She would survive, rebuild, and thrive, a woman no longer defined by fear, but by courage, dignity, and the power of love. Richard Clarke and Vanessa Hayes were swiftly arrested, their crimes documented and broadcasted as undeniable proof of their malice. The legal system, armed with William's security footage and witness testimony, ensured they would face the full consequences of their actions. Emily, though still recovering physically and emotionally, watched as the tormentors who had caused her so much pain were brought to justice. The courtroom proceedings were swift, leaving Richard and Vanessa with no defense against the overwhelming evidence of their cruelty. For years, they had believed they could manipulate and dominate Emily without consequences, but the tables had finally turned. The sentencing was life imprisonment, a verdict that shocked both the public and the perpetrators themselves. Emily's journey from humiliation, poverty, and despair to safety, justice, and empowerment had reached its apex. She realized that while she had lost her child, she had gained freedom, protection, and a loving husband who valued and cherished her. The nightmare imposed by Richard and Vanessa had ended permanently, and Emily's resilience had been validated. Every tear, every moment of suffering had been transformed into strength, proving that cruelty and injustice could never overcome courage, love, and justice. With Richard and Vanessa imprisoned, Emily Clarke finally embraced a life filled with hope, love, and dignity. She and William Harrington continued their private marriage in peace, focusing on building a future together, filled with family, philanthropy, and shared dreams. Though the scars of her past remained, they no longer dictated her life. Emily had risen from the depths of despair to claim a life of respect, security, and empowerment. Each day, she walked with confidence, knowing that she was valued, protected, and cherished, not just by William, but by her own inner strength. Emily's story became a testament to resilience, courage, and the power of justice. The villa, once a place of healing, transformed into a home of love, laughter, and hope. William's devotion never wavered, and together they envisioned a life filled with family, joy, and purpose. Emily had endured betrayal, poverty, and humiliation, yet she emerged stronger, wiser, and unbreakable. The past, once a source of pain, became a reminder of her strength and resilience. She had survived, she had loved, and she had triumphed. A new dawn awaited, bright and promising, where Emily Clarke's life was finally her own, free, empowered, and filled with a love she had always deserved. That's all for today. Like, subscribe, and see you in the next episode. Stay tuned.